Good day, Mission Podcast community. I'm your host and podcast navigator, Doug Dvorak. Welcome to Mission Possible, the podcast where we explore the mindset, strategies, and stories behind turning big visions into real victories. I'm really honored to welcome Mark Shawver, a really interesting entrepreneur and artist. I just moved into a new house about a year ago, and my neighbor, Scott, Mark's son, and I were talking, and he invited me in to see his new home, and I saw all this incredible artwork. And I said, "Who's that artist?" He said, "My dad." I said, "Give me his number." And I commissioned Mark to do an oil painting of my wife and I and our four great nieces and nephews. So I'm just highly honored to meet with a creative here, somebody who spent 30 plus years running and grinding his own business and now has sort of morphed into the creative, which is Mark Shawver. So Mark, thanks a lot. I'm really honored to have you. You're one of Boise's most captivating visual artists, known for your bold use of color, texture, and emotion. You capture the rugged beauty and quiet poetry of the Idaho landscape, but not limited to Idaho, Northern California, and places beyond, with deep connections between your art, nature, and the human spirit. You started, my understanding, your early days sketching mountains and rivers of the Pacific Northwest, growing up, living, running a business in Northern California. You've had a number of different gallery exhibitions, very successful, and you continue to push the boundaries with a fearless sense of experimentation and authenticity. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Doug. I'm really happy to be here. It's an honor.
Same here. So, Mark, let's talk about your beginnings and inspirations for our listeners who may not yet know your work. How would you describe your art in one sentence?
I think probably finding beauty in the mundane and everyday objects that we tend to just pass over. By the way, Doug, one correction. I don't want to mislead your viewers. I'm an acrylic artist, never painted with oils, so I don't know if that makes a big difference, but.
It's still beautiful.
Your painting's going to be acrylic too.
Walk me through tell me and tell our listeners what acrylic is relative to watercolor or oil.
Okay, good question. Yeah, so I started really painting. As you mentioned in your intro, I started painting in 2000. And I had been running for about 30 plus years already, my graphic design firm that I had for nearly 40 years. Started painting at the side, and I painted exclusively with watercolor. So, water media, I knew about oil painting, and I admire a lot of, even the most famous painters in the world in history are mostly oil painters. So anyway, it was just, I didn't want to get into the chemicals, and it's a lot of cleanup, and there's the advantage to oils is they don't dry fast, so you can blend. You can go back even a couple days later. You can go back to a painting. You can continue to blend and go over and paint things and change it. With watercolor, it's probably the most. If you ask any artist, it's probably the most difficult. I didn't realize that when I started. But a medium, because it's very unforgiving. Once you start, you have to start very light and then build up darker and darker. And if you make a mistake or something, it's really hard to edit out or clean up or take the paint off without damaging the paper. You're always painting on paper. But I got used to it, and I got good at it, and I really enjoyed it and loved it. So what happened, I painted probably for 10 years or something like that in only watercolor. Then I entered a contest, and it was actually it was in the Bay Area where I lived, but it was an opportunity to paint a mural in our area. But the call to artists went out all over the world. I came to find out, and there were several many hundred or 1,000, I don't know, entries. Anyway, I won, so that was a big deal for me. I won uh, the opportunity to do the mural, and murals are always painted with acrylic paint outside. Murals. Even inside ones are, I think, because they're super durable. Okay, the light they're light sunlight resistant, so they won't fade over time, especially if you varnish them. And as far as the ease of painting, oh my gosh, it's so much easier, faster to paint. So I did this mural, and I'm really proud of it. It came out great, and it was a big deal. It was huge. It was like 16 feet by 8 feet, and all with acrylic. Well, I ended up at the end of the job with a whole bunch of acrylic paint.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to give that a try on canvas, and I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, these watercolors, every time I finish one, you have to frame it, and you have to put it behind glass because it's very fragile. The sun will fade it if you put it in the sun. If it gets wet at all, it'll ruin it completely. Put it behind glass, frame it. I'm going to say on average it's $300 to $400 to frame a good size, watercolor. So here I am with a house full of $300 to $400. I still don't sell a ton of work. I sell some, and a lot more than I used to. But so another great advantage to acrylic is you paint on canvas. You don't have to put any glass on it. You never should put glass on it. And I make my own frames. So
Wow.
So it's a whole different animal as far as the economics of it, and I love it. It's just easy. I've gotten used to it, and it's so if you screw anything up or you want to change anything, it's so opaque. You can just go right over it and change and add things or whatever you want. Keep painting on it forever if you wanted to. So that's sort of a long-winded answer to that. Sorry.
So no, that's fascinating. I just learned something. So I understand, watercolor. I've been
Yeah.
up at a variety of different Idaho beautiful parks and seen plein air and watercolor artists painting. I know what oil is, but does acrylic, so ease of use, dries a little quicker?
Super fast.
But if I had a oil painting here and an acrylic here,
Yeah.
would there be any significant or subtle differences from the paintings themselves, how they look, the vibrancy of the colors, etc.?
That's a good question. Well, oil is typically a little thicker. It's creamier. I think a lot of people do what they call impasto type of a painting where they put the paint on real thick. You can do that with acrylics too, but the tendency, I think, it's a water-based paint. It's plastic. I mean, that's why it's so tough and so strong, and it's hard to, you can't really hurt it. But it just depends upon the technique, really, and the artist. I mean, I've had people look at my paintings and say, "Oh, these are beautiful oil paintings," and I'll say, "Well, they're not really." And say, "Well, how do you blend?" Blending is the big issue, because the oil painting you can get a very soft, subtle, a sky. You can go from dark to light. You'd never even see the gradation. With acrylics you can do it, but I got to keep the paint. The paint has to be kind of kept wet, and I have to work pretty fast with my blending and using the right kind of brush and stuff. But I can make just as smooth a gradation or color blending with acrylic. And if you compared it to the oil, but I think you could. I don't know. You can tell. Maybe. Really, I don't know.
Couldn't.
I don't know. I don't know if the average person can really.
I couldn't.
It's clean up, super easy clean up, water clean up. And that's the lazy part of me. But plus the chemicals are, they're pretty toxic. I mean, I've read a lot about it. You get in a closed space, and some people can have issues with, the smell and breathing in the oils, the turpentine. They use turpentine and stuff to blend and to clean up.
So really, your start was, hey, you're winding down your business 25 years ago, explored painting, called artists for a mural. It's outside. You try acrylic. You had been painting in watercolor, but this is your go-to medium now, sort of happenstance because of that.
Yeah.
So tell us, what's the story behind the moment you knew art wasn't just a hobby, it was your calling?
Well, when I was a little kid, my dad was a draftsman. He worked at PG&E, the big utility in California or the West Coast, and he could sketch real good. He was a draftsman, so he was more of a technical drawer, But he was a good, he could draw real good, and he used to he used to draw the Disney figures for my brother and I, just like on a whim. Do Mickey Mouse, Dad, do Donald Duck, and he just sit there and boom, and it came out perfect. And I think that I'm not kidding. When I look back and really, and I was probably a little kid, 5, 6 years, 7 years, I don't know. And it just, I thought it was just magical, and I was so amazed at his ability to do that. So I think that just kind of sparked something, and I just kind of, I used to look at a lot of magazine, cartoon, magazines for kids and stuff, and I copy characters and draw just for fun. I never really looked at it. I was a kid, so I never really looked at it seriously. But went to high school or grammar school, high school. I was into sports. Never really thought about art. But when I graduated high school, I decided to go to college. And when I got in there, they started your counselor, what are you interested in? I wasn't going to play sports. I wasn't good enough, so. I said, I kind of like art. I mean, what do you do with that? And so he suggested some classes, and I just really got hooked. And then after I went to junior college for years, and then when I left, they advised me to go to San Jose State, which had a really good commercial art program, which is what I got into, and that's how I started my business at commercial. And I just loved it, Doug. I was so lucky. We were talking a little earlier before we started. My whole career in business was doing something I loved to do. I mean, there's challenges. I had a lot of employees. I had a pretty good-sized company at one time. Business challenges, but the work we did and I got to be involved in was so rewarding and so fun that you can't help but be successful when you're loving what you're doing every day because you just want to do more of it and you want to, and I was a pretty good business guy too, so, but like you said, I stopped the business in 2006. So in 2000, I started doing it on the side. I'd come home from work and just started painting, and I really got into that. So I was actually coming home from a long day at work and then painting at night, and because it was so fun and I was so into it, But and then after I stopped the business, it was like, the gloves were off, man.
You had some time.
Painting all the time, that was what I did all the time,
So do you remember the first piece you ever created that made you think, I might actually be good at this? Was that the mural, or what was it?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Outside of your business, when you came home, you're still running the business, but you created a piece and you said, or your wife said, or your family said, wow, I might actually be good at this.
It had to be a watercolor for sure. And, I have all of them. I've kept all of them. I sold a few, but I've never, and I have several of them that I do see the date is around 2000. So it had to be some, that's a great question. It's making me think way back. But my paintings are all based on photographs, by the way. I've never painted outside. They call it plein air painting. I've never done that. That's another thing that the great artists all do, but I've never done. For one thing, watercolor is tough to do it. People do plein air painting with watercolor. You got to be really good at it, and you got to be fast, and you got to have a certain technique. So my technique is super high detail. And when I was doing watercolors, they're even way more detailed than my acrylics are now. And it took me long. I mean, they would take me 20, 30, 40 hours to paint a watercolor. And they're all, like I said, based on pictures, things that I just see. I always have my phone with me, right? That's a great advantage to the iPhone is I can take pictures anytime, all the time. And I remember there was a tractor in a field, and I passed it every day going to work by my house, from my house to work. It took me a long time to paint it. It was just a really beautiful, old, rusty, out of use for God knows how many years, next to a little barn. And I painted like every single little piece of grass. It took me forever. And, all the details on the old tractor, the rust, I loved all that. So that might have been one of the first ones. And, yeah, when I started showing people that, building a website and things, I did get a lot of positive feedback. So that's nice. That's good to do, but I was lucky. I never have had to paint to make a living. So that's a huge advantage, that I have. I retired and we did pretty good in business, so I was able to have, just paint what I want to paint. And
What
so,
a great hobby and luxury. So
oh man,
you
no
shared with
kidding, no
me.
kidding. So sometimes the stuff my wife kind of, wonders about the things I paint. Some things are pretty strange and, just little crazy little things that I see that I just think the way the light hit that bucket or, something very ordinary just looks beautiful to me and I'll take a picture and then I'll paint it. So,
That's a
so that's
cool.
what I've been doing for the last, 20 years.
That's cool. So you shared with me the Shawver clan, 3 generations. You grew up
Yeah.
in Northern Cal. You shared with us your dad was a draftsman, but also liked to draw. Did your
Yeah.
grandparents, any other parts of the Shawver family tree, have a propensity to art,
You
drawing,
know, I,
painting?
I don't, not that I know of, and you know what? You're reminding me now. I may have to take that back about my first picture because you're reminding me. I had a very, very wonderful upbringing, and huge part of it was my grandparents, and I was so lucky to have, our whole family was lucky to have them. I did, and I think I was only I might have still been in college. So this was way back. I was in college in the early 80s, or no, late 70s, and I did a drawing, a colored pencil drawing portrait of my grandparents for I think it was their 60th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And it blew them away. It was from a little old picture of them when they were younger. They were older by now. But and then it kind of shocked the family when I brought it and gave it to them. We had a pretty big family. My dad had 5 brothers and sisters. We had a lot of cousins, and so when I brought this thing, and they were all going, "Holy cow! What do you're pretty good at that." So I think that could have been some really early motivation for me too. Now that was colored pencils, which I did do colored pencil for a while too.
Is
In
that
fact,
is that?
college.
Go, I was curious. Sorry to interrupt you. Is that painting still around of your grandparents that you draw in colored pencil?
I think it's somewhere. I might have it in. I probably have it. Yeah, I'll bet you I do have it in my. I've got a storage here place, and I've got portfolios full of all my old work, a lot of my graphic design work too. And I think I do have it in there. I mean, I look back at it, it's kind of. I did capture them though. I mean, the likeness was good, so hopefully your painting will come out that good too.
I'm sure.
Portraits are tough. That's the
Yeah,
hardest thing for me.
I
By,
understand.
by far. I mean, ooh.
So, Mark, if
But
somebody walked into your studio today, they can see it behind you. What would they see? Chaos, calm, or controlled creativity?
well, that's it. You're right. You're looking at my studio. It's a room in my house, and so it's I keep it pretty. It's pretty small, so I can't really afford to have too much mayhem going on. But my if you could see closer on the walls back there, they're pretty messed up. There's paint all over them and stuff from splashing and things. But and I have a big carpet down here on the ground that is full of paint to protect the real carpet underneath it. But I think it's pretty. It's not really chaos. I don't think. It's pretty. Now I do have to admit that I put those paintings up behind me so to kind of showcase some of my stuff.
Yeah, it's
I
very.
don't normally have those. I'll have a few paintings up. I do have a few, in fact, in front of me and around here. I have a few that I keep up. So sometimes a current painting, I'll hang it up so I can look at it and stuff. But if I left those up there, they'd be splattered with little things of paint. You can see my palette and stuff right there, and it gets pretty splashy. When I'm especially on a big painting. You can see there's the palette. I mean the easel. See that you can see the easel over there. And,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Interesting. So I was watching a podcast with Neil Young, and the host said, "How do you write this great music? When do you get inspired?" He said, "I can't tell you, but when the inspiration comes, it could be 6 in the morning or three in the afternoon, and when it comes, I go with that vibe." So, who has been the biggest creative influence or mentor on you in your artistic journey?
You mean like a person that I've studied, or just like a real?
an artist that inspired you either by their work or the guidance who said, Mark, you should, it sounds like your guide, but from an artistic perspective, what artists, past, present, inspire you?
Well, I do remember actually a point where a professor of mine, I was in the graphic design program at San Jose State, and taking illustration classes, typography classes, layout classes, art history, just stuff like that. And there was a professor that I really admired. He was an older guy, and I really respected him and his work and his opinion. And I had done another painting. This is oh man, now here we go. Listen to this, Doug. So I have painted one painting in oil, and I painted a picture in college. I think it was kind of for a class or something, but it was a really pretty big painting, and I painted it in oil. It was all black with a little white mix in, so it was a monochromatic picture, and it was from a newspaper picture that I saw, a photograph I saw and was impressed with. And I painted the whole thing with oil, but it was on a dry brush technique is what it's called. So you take the paint, and I never used any turpentine or thinner or anything. It was always just the paint rubbed really deeply onto it, and it was on illustration board. It wasn't on canvas. Anyway, so that's a long story there, and that's but that's the only oil painting I've ever. Anyway, I brought this painting after I finished it and I was very nervous about it because it was like one of my first attempts to make a fine art piece. And I brought it to this professor, and I wanted to get his opinion on it. And he encouraged me. He said, there's something here. You've got a talent. You've got, I can tell you got something going. And he goes, you should stick with this and try it. Try to make something out of it. And that just, I'll never forget that. I mean, it was just one of those moments when somebody said something to you that just kind of launched you. Now, I did go in a different direction. I went into the commercial side because I really honestly didn't, I had no idea, and it was probably the right thing. I had no idea how you could make a living as a fine artist. I mean, I see a lot of podcasts, I read a lot of articles, of course, read books, and it's a tough deal. I mean, we hear about the famous people, and of course they're rich, and they all made great livings. I mean, a lot of them had to struggle a long time, but let me tell you, there's millions of people out there that are trying to do it and holding down another job and coming home at night and trying to paint, trying to get in galleries. And so it kind of goes back to my luxury of not having that pressure and just doing it for the sheer joy of it. But yeah, and then I have several artists that I just, love their work, and they're always a continuing inspiration.
Who are some of those artists?
Andrew Wyeth is probably the first one that I latched onto. And he paints in it very interesting. He does watercolor, but his medium was egg tempura. Or egg tempera, I think they say it. Anyway, I actually tried that. It's probably the hardest way to paint. You actually paint using the white or the yolk of an egg, and you mix it with a dry powder pigment, and you mix the colors that way. And it dries super fast, and it's used when you're painting really fine detail. So it's like using thousands or millions of little tiny, cross-hatching marks. But everything, the people that painted that are good at that, their work is unbelievably realistic and beautiful.
That's interesting.
I actually tried one. I got like a quarter of the way through it, trying to mix the stuff up, and I go, I can't even imagine how you paint like this. So I gave it up, but I'm just, and his subject matter and what he passed away, I'm going to say 7-8 years ago. He was almost 100 years old, but he was one of America's have you ever heard of him?
Sure. I've seen some of his work.
So, I mean,
great artist.
And then, of course, Edward Hopper always is a hero.
I had a print of Hopper, the one of the diner with the guy. Remember
The
that one?
Nighthawks? The
Yeah,
Nighthawk? Yeah,
yeah,
Nighthawk.
yeah.
Yeah, the
Not,
most famous.
obviously not an original. Mark, let's talk about your process and philosophy. Your work captures the extraordinary in the everyday. How do you train your eye to see the beauty in the mundane?
I don't know if I've never really had to train my eye. It's just maybe back to the Neil Young thing. It's just kind of, I have a natural inclination or a natural sensitivity to, um, uh, really what it comes down to is light, the way the sun hits something. When you hear artists talk about, I'm painting the light, it's always about the way the light hits something and casts a shadow or, um, so those are the kind of things that I think I just kind of naturally see, and it's everywhere. I mean, every day, every minute, there's something going on with
Bright
looking at
sun or
gray or
cloudy
yeah,
or gray, and
on
that's
a
a
person,
real
on a thing. Go ahead.
and it's really difficult, I would imagine, to have those different light pieces. But when you're in the zone and you're painting, how do you know when a painting is done, or do you ever struggle to stop refining?
Um, no, I don't have. I've heard that before. How some artists struggle with, well, I just got to keep going. I don't seem to have that. Maybe it's because of the way I paint. I paint from photographs. You know, it takes me quite a while to get that ready. I use a computer a lot.
Hmm.
I'll bring the photos into Photoshop and then manipulate them, change them, and make them. And I do a lot of my editing and everything. I usually get it pretty close to what I want to paint, uh, you know, and then I print it out, and then that's what I paint. So once I'm kind of, done with creating that, my using my working over my reference, I'm done. I
So
mean,
your process is you're out and about in life, you see something that inspires you, you take a picture on your iPhone, you go to your computer, you
yeah,
Photoshop it, then you get it to where you want, then you print it out and you set that beside your canvas and easel and then
yeah.
paint using a crystal. Do you start with a pencil first?
So, so I use a grid system to transfer my. I have a really nice big Epson printer, so I print out the prints. All come out on an 11 by 17 piece of paper, so it's as big as it can be, so I can see the details and stuff. I take that printout and then I draw a grid on the on that printout. Okay, and the grid proportions are exactly the same. I use the same proportions on the grid. They're squares, and I put that grid up on my canvas. So what that enables me to do is, all you're doing is really reproducing and redrawing each little square on the paper, onto the bigger grid on the canvas. So yeah, I do very detailed drawings. I mean, I don't, I'm not just kind of looking at it loosely. My painting is pretty tight. I'm not a super loose impressionistic
But
or
it's a freehand with acrylic from
I
a
draw with a charcoal pencil.
so you draw it from the
With a little,
picture
yeah,
to the canvas, and then you paint over the.
exactly.
That's
Yep.
interesting. So what emotions do you hope people feel when they experience your work in person?
Well, I hope they it makes them feel happy and joyful. To see something beautiful. So and maybe something they wouldn't expect to be beautiful.
And
You know.
I think that as we evolve with more technology, a busy workspace, life, personal, and AI, that people still want to go to a live concert, see a live comedian, and see a human produced work of art, not a
Oh, I
technical
agree
piece.
with you. I agree with you 1,000%. But that is an issue. I mean, people are already doing it. They're already creating unbelievably beautiful things. Maybe they're too beautiful. I don't know, without ever painting anything. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's the future is going to be very interesting with all that stuff. I've actually tried to use AI a little bit for to create some reference or something. I'll need, because I do use search engines to like say for instance, I see a cool scene or something, I think it's beautiful. I said, boy, it would be so great if there was an old truck in there, but the truck wasn't there. So I'll search, do a search, find a truck, and then I can Photoshop it in there. So I'm kind of using technology a little bit too to add and build and, expand on some of the pictures that I take already. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe that's right. Maybe the handmade stuff, where people really put their heart and soul into something, becomes even more valuable as technology kind of cheapens things. I don't know. I don't know where that's going to go, to tell you the truth. I've read about it and I'm interested in it, but I don't think any of us really know the power of AI, and not in just the entertainment industry, but in our whole, our lives.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting and scary. So you're 5 years to Boise. I'm new to Boise, a year. Boise's art scene is growing. I like the vibe and feel. What's it like being part of that creative environment?
Well, I'm trying to. I haven't really jumped in with both feet. I've had exhibits. I've shown work. I've been involved in Eagle art. I'm actually on the arts committee for the city of Eagle. So I want to get more involved and be involved in things. And but yeah, you're right. I think the Boise art scene. It's funny. One of my goals. I mean, this is just out of the blue, but is to have some of my work or have a show in the Boise Museum. Our Boise
or
Art
BOMA
Museum.
or whatever it's called.
BOMA, yeah. I mean, that's a big, one of those big giant goals. I'd love to be in. I should be in some galleries first, and that's a big step there even.
But when we were talking a couple weekends ago, you were at an art fair. Do you prefer art fairs, galleries? What's your passion when you show your art in public?
I'm just, believe it or not, Doug, I'm just getting started with actually really marketing and learning about all that. Last year I did the show, the outside exhibit. It's Art by the River. I'm on that board too. It's the River of Hope is the board, the foundation rather that sponsors that event. And I had never done an outside exhibit, and boy, was that a learning experience. I did it again this year. I did it better, and it was good. I sold one piece, so I didn't have if you're gonna rate the success of the show from that point, but it's a lot of fun to be there. You meet other people. My work was well received. I don't know if my prices were too high, or again, my work is not, people, you don't know what the general public really likes. Do they just want mountains and rivers? Well, I had a painting of a wheelbarrow.
And that's the one that sold?
No. Well, you know what though? The one that did sell was one of my offbeat ones for sure. It was the back of a camper that was parked. It was a parking stall where the camper was parked next to the guy's truck, but it was the back of both of them. The light was shining from the camper onto the truck. It was a night scene. There was a big hairy antenna coming off the camper, and you could tell there was somebody in there, so it's just that my paintings hopefully are kind of narrative, right? Maybe they tell a little story and people would see it and say, oh, I wonder what's going on there, because that's what I think, that's what I kind of enjoy and wonder. I'll paint an old house or an old barn that's deserted, and every time I'll think, boy, some family lived in there. I mean, they had Christmas in there. I mean, they had maybe people die in there, get married in there, babies. I mean, there's just a story behind these places, and it's just, it's almost like an honor to, paint and capture some of the history of a place, or something like that.
Cool. Let's talk about your growth and guidance as an artist. What's one lesson you wish you'd learned earlier in your artistic career?
Well, one of the greatest things about this journey for me is that I'm nowhere near. I'll do this. Hopefully, I can do this till I'm done. And I learn stuff all the time, Doug. I mean, I haven't. There's so much to learn and so much room for improvement. And that's what's fascinating, and that's what I enjoy and really love about it. The challenge, trying to get better. They call it the curse, artist curse, is that and this happens to a lot of people, believe me, a lot of artists, you're just never really satisfied with your work, even the finished pieces. There's some that I'm happy with and pretty happy with and think, well, they came out good, but I'll tell you, a lot more of them are not as good or didn't turn out the way I thought they would than do. And it's just because I'm always learning, and that's one another great thing about YouTube or just the internet is, boy, I can go take classes online and learn from even people that I really admire and respect, and so I'm always learning and watching and reading books, and so
So your journey as an artist is not a destination; it's a journey, and
exactly.
continuous improvement, lifelong learning. So, what advice would you give to emerging artists trying to find their visual voice?
Well, I don't know if I'm really the qualified guy to do that, but what my philosophy or and again, but going back to, I'm pretty fortunate is, I think you can, if you're painting, who are you painting for? Are you painting for yourself? Are you using your own unique talent and your own unique vision and your history and your life experiences to create art, or are you kind of painting to, sell paintings and make a living, or you're kind of painting for the market? I don't know if either way is right or wrong, to tell you the truth. But and another thing I learned that I probably don't do enough of, but they all say don't get discouraged and keep painting. Don't give up. A lot of people give up too soon. It's difficult, and if you have the calling, the passion, try to fight through the tough times and stick with it. I mean, it's worth it. I mean, if you have this in you, I mean, it's such a wonderful gift to be able to, it's so therapeutic and wonderful. I just love every minute of painting, even if it doesn't go good. It's still a good, it's still the time I spend doing it is wonderful. So.
Yeah, and I think the without getting into a political discussion, the cut in the arts now. I think the world needs more doctors and scientists. I don't think we need more politicians, but we need more artists. And I see the impact that art has had in a variety of different geographies and socioeconomic strata. That art and how it's impacted me and how it brings joy and a sense of purpose to a lot of people is really important now as we're getting more screen time and more digital. I think, going back and just look at, legislation now in public schools that a lot of these districts are saying, park your cell phones at the door. You'll pick them up when you leave. That getting back to reading, writing, outside, drawing, art, it's really important for us as a species and for enjoying life. And what you're doing is just amazing. So now we morph into my favorite part of the podcast, Mr. Mark Shawver. Rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask you a series of about 8 questions, and I want a 1-word or 2 or 3-word response. Are you ready?
Ready.
Favorite art supply you can't live without?
Computer.
Computer. Oil or acrylic, and why?
Acrylic, ease of cleanup.
Studio soundtrack, silence, music, or podcasts?
Classical.
Excellent. First painting you ever sold, do you remember who bought it?
Could be a friend of mine who I'm a musician too, so it could have been one of my bandmates. He actually bought 3 of my paintings, and it was like made me unbelievably happy.
Excellent. Excellent. Dream location to paint or exhibit your work?
Well, there it is, the Boise Museum, Art Museum.
Excellent. Most underrated artist, living or dead?
I love this artist, John Register. He's passed away, but I just love his work, and I don't think hardly anybody's heard of him.
I haven't heard of him. If you weren't an artist, what would you be doing instead?
Maybe music. Probably music.
In 1 or 2 words, what does art mean to you?
It means joy and celebrating the beauty that we've been blessed with by God on this earth.
Excellent. Mark, this 40 minutes has flown. My guest today is Boise artist Mark Shawver. Mark, if our listeners want to get a hold of you, can you give us your contact information and your website?
Yeah, my website is www.shawver.com. That's my name, SHAW, like Shaw, and then VER.com, shawver.com. And then I'm on Instagram it's at Shawver Art is my Instagram. And I'm also on Facebook.
Cool. My guest today has been Boise artist Mark Shawver. He's a great guy, a talented artist. I've commissioned him to do a family portrait. I've learned a ton, Mark, and I know our listeners will too. Thank you, Mission Possible podcast community. Check us out on YouTube or missionpossible.biz. And carpe diem.
Thanks, Doug. Been a lot of fun.
My pleasure. All right.